Hi, I'm Anthony Guardia, and we are here for our very last interview with our town council and school committee candidates. I am lucky to have actually the newest soon-to-be elected official. There's no race, but our friends at WCAT have put this together. I'm here with Alex Naumann. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Before I do start, though, I want to do what I've done in the beginning of all these and thank WCAT and Ian McDermott. As some of you are probably aware if you watch these, again, I don't organize anything. Alex campaigns don't organize it. Ian and WCAT go out of their way. And they very easily could have skipped the town council and school committee because there's no campaigns, there's no race. As long as everybody gets one vote, they're in. However, they felt it was important that the candidates share their views with the public and made this possible. So with that said, Alex, I'm going to start with the most difficult question of all. All right? Can you look into that camera there, introduce yourself, and tell the people of Wakefield a little bit about you and why they should vote for you? You only need one person to vote for you, so you just got to convince one.
Well, maybe I could just convince you.
Yeah, exactly. Then you're good. Then you're good.
Hi, my name is Alex Naumann. I am currently a principal in Everett at the George Cavarian School. I've been in the Everett Public School system for 26 years, and I started out as a middle school science teacher. I made my way up to teaching at the high school. I taught at an at-risk program at Everett High School. I went on to become a dean at Everett High School, moved from there to be an assistant principal at the school that I'm currently at now, which is George Cavarian School, and I've been principal there for the last, I believe it's 6 years.
Wow. Well, and now, you'll be bringing that expertise to the Wakefield School Committee. And I think, my history only goes back so long, but I think you're going to be the first. I know Tom Markham's a superintendent, but I think he was on the finance side. You might be the first principal that we've had on the school committee, which is a great experience you'll bring. But as I've said in the other interviews, if you watch them or if people watch them, I literally just ask my friends and family. This isn't a scientific survey of what the community feels, just what they think the issues of the day are, what they'd like to hear, and most of the questions are pretty similar and pretty out there now. And I'll start with the one that probably came up the most consistent among all the age groups, which is a concern about the federal government, about the Trump administration abolishing the Department of Education. And the worry there is in Wakefield, there's probably not as much as ever, quite frankly, but there is a growing percentage of multilingual learners. Special needs budgeting comes from federal, nutrition budgeting comes from the federal government. And I think I read the Haley administration said there's probably about $100 million in state grants from the federal budget. There's a fear, I think, in Wakefield that if the Department of Education does get abolished, how can we, I guess, prepare to make sure that we don't suffer a major impact? Or B, is it being overblown? Is it something we should even have to worry about?
Well, it's pretty interesting because it's a concern of everyone. And, obviously it's not something that we take lightly, but, with your you being a fan of wrestling, having that particular person in charge and maybe
Stone Cold could have finished the job at WrestleMania.
It's everyone has the same concern. For the next year or so that we're not sure. Same thing in Everett. With budgeting and funding and where that's going to come from. There's a concern about what's going to happen in the next year, the next 2 years, 3 years, and it is a concern. And I really think that the best thing that we can do is prepare with, getting creative with where our funds come from now and what we can do to adjust should these be like the worst case scenario play out. There's also talk of, even abolishing the Department of Ed, but returning the money to the states. So maybe that money isn't necessarily gone, and maybe that part is the overblown part, but, that's still something to be considered. But I really think it's preparing now, taking a look at the budget, preparing for those things, programs, maybe not so much in Wakefield and some other communities that are funded by Title I, other title funding, that come from the federal government, Department of Ed. I really think you need to be creative with preparation and then creative with how to supplement some of the funding that you were getting for really important programs for our MLL students and students that are students with disabilities.
No, makes sense. with that said, so in these small towns, um, a lot of the funding comes from property taxes, and right now there's overrides in there's a $14 million override in Stoneham, a $5 million override in Linfield, an override failed in Melrose, and an override failed in I think Reading or North Reading, and I think North Andover is cutting 40 teachers right now.
Yes.
So yeah, it's so one of the concerns. So right now, knock on wood, there isn't an override on the table in Wakefield, but you being the newest, can you kind of give us a sense of, I guess, what your governing philosophy is in education when you're trying to balance a budget that may be limited by the tax dollars versus providing the best academic experience and school experience for our kids and finding that perfect combination?
Well, that's the tough, right? That's part. That's where that's kind of like the.
And if you can do it in 30 seconds, that'd be great. Yeah.
That's the crux of being on the school committee, right?
Yep.
Like, your main goal is to provide, the best public education you can for the students, right? And doing that without necessarily increasing the budget or, worrying about override or increasing taxpayers' contributions, right? It's tough to do, but I think you need to keep in mind that as far as the school committee is concerned, the focus is on providing the best education for the students, and whatever that takes is where our focus should be.
No, that's.
I don't know if that was necessarily a straight-on answer, but
no,
that's the focal point.
No, I think it is because there is. I've always seen two philosophies on the school committee. One that says the job of the school committee is to advocate for the best school system possible. And then if the town wants to cut it, so be it. And then on the flip side, there's a side that says, no, the school committee needs to manage it. And there's never a clear cut and dry answer, right? I think it's always trying to find that sweet spot. And again, it's interesting. I think your background as a principal is going to be very interesting because you're on the front lines of there. And actually, this will be, assuming everything works out, you're going to be on a school committee where you'll be a principal. Kevin Fontanellis is the president of the Saugus Teachers Union.
Right, yeah.
And Tom Markham is an assistant superintendent. So, and Kevin Piscadlo is a college dean. So it's a great, knock on wood, resume-wise. And Eileen, I think she's going to be off. All right, so don't get me wrong. But Eileen Collard works for a curriculum company. So it's a great resume of members. All right, to get to some more, I guess I would say, specific Wakefield issues that we hear about. But again, you're seeing them in a lot of communities. One right now that's on play is contract negotiations. Now, there are contract negotiations in Wakefield among most of the units, with the exception of the teachers that was settled a few months ago. But the most public one, or the one that's getting the most attention, is the paraprofessionals. And I guess my question would be, what are your thoughts, I guess, again, overall general governing philosophy when it comes to contract negotiations, but then also how you would try to say the best way possible, how you would view or try to participate in contract negotiations specifically with the paraprofessional unit and the job that they do, and understanding that not all the things can be public, right? Like,
Right. So it's tough because it is an interesting position being a principal and talking about the contract negotiations. And although I see it from the side, looking at how the school committee might, take a look at it, is that, and going back to the focal point of, getting all of our students, every single one of our students to achieve, involves them having the best teaching staff, the best paraprofessionals, the best support staff, specialists, interventionists, et cetera. And I think it's very important that we take care of our teachers, we take care of all of our educators, because they're the ones who are taking care of our children. And they do it, and the job has become a lot more, taxing and difficult than it has been, or it was even 20 years ago. So I think in regards to paraprofessionals, that position has also changed. At least that position in different communities has changed. Before, paraprofessionals were getting paid to be an extra hand in classrooms. But now I see any educator that you would bring in, or anyone that you brought in to staff a school, like paraprofessionals, are charged with doing the work of being like another teacher in the
No, they're
classroom.
co-teachers. I mean,
That should be the focus. It hasn't always been looked at that, but what they do in classrooms as co-teachers is something that shouldn't go undervalued. And I think that, doing what we can, like as they did with negotiations for the teachers' contract, for the paraprofessionals, I think that should be looked at in the same lens. I don't know how the school committee went about the negotiations, what they look for, what they asked for, and then vice versa. But I would say that, taking care of every educator, everyone who works inside of a school, especially the paraprofessionals who do now are relied upon as co-teachers, I think that's very important to make sure that they're happy and that we have the best staff. And that involves making them happy with negotiations.
no, you're absolutely, one of the things that I noticed, I want to say it was Mr. God, I hope I'm not giving the wrong quote. Somebody, there was a principal, Brian Middleton Cox of the Woodville School. And I remember once, this was before we had the new Galvin and the new high school, he said, I will take a good educator, a good teacher, and a good para over the nicest building with all the technology in the world. So the next question kind of go from our teachers to our students.
It's a very strong statement.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he was a great principal. So the next issue that's been up and it's been on the item lately is later start times. So the Wakefield School Committee is currently looking at moving the start time for the high school. They have three options. One is no changes, which it's around 7:30 a.m. now. I don't know the exact time. Or moving it 45 minutes, or moving it to an hour later. In my unscientific survey of high school students, I think it was almost unanimous, if not unanimous, that they all want the later start time. So I'd love your thoughts on, do you think high school students should start later? And if so, how soon, or how do you go about implementing that process?
So I've been to a couple of forums that they've had, and I've been, pretty vocal about it. I just don't know, the driving piece behind and I know they've had the informational sessions where they talked about, the science behind sleep patterns with older students, how that affects what they do. But I still am looking at that question of, why are we looking to change that now? And do we have information on start times? Obviously, the kids are going to say, yeah, let's start later. Like what's the data? What do we have for metrics on the impact of changing start times? Now, the school committee's focus is always to improve student achievement, right? So obviously, I'd be looking at it through that lens, right? Does it improve student achievement in the long run? And do we have data that shows that? And I think that's still a question that is not really answered. So with that, I wouldn't necessarily take the stance of, yeah, maybe we should go towards later start times. And I think, but it's, they talked about, the study, I forget who the person was that they had that was doing
I don't remember either.
But they talked about just kind of improving the well-being of students, right? And that they have a better quality of, education when they're feeling better, when they have more rest, which is understood. But, it also comes back to, the later start times, they might just end up going to bed later. You know what I mean? Later start times is not necessarily, I don't know how much that's going to impact if we're worried about attendance and tardiness. Does that have an impact? In my experience, it doesn't matter what time you set the beginning of work or a school day. If students were late before, they're going to be late after, right? Like if they have that tendency to be late. I know that there are a lot of people that are thinking and pushing that, right? That it's, maybe for like mental health students and that aspect because their sleep cycles are off. Maybe this, maybe there's more irritability. Maybe they're more prone to, different thought processes during the day that they wouldn't if they were well rested. And I see the value in that. I really can't get past show me why specifically the data that shows. I'm more of like that, data driven. Show me the data shows that actually changing the school start times is going to have an impact significantly on student achievement. And I know well-being is part of that, right? They got to be able to be before they can do, right? That's very important. But at the same time, is there any impetus now for why we're looking at changing the start time other than, hey, we've had this recent research that shows it? Are we not performing as well as our, the cities around us, cities and towns around us? And is that because they have, later start times? So stuff like that. I'd want a little bit more information. I'd want a little bit more hard data about the effects of changing the start time. Because right now I'm of the, the mindset if it's not broke, don't fix it.
No, understood. And we'll go from our oldest to our youngest. One of the issues right now is in Wakefield is there are a lot of families who are waitlisted. I think the list was 60 families, Superintendent Lyons said, were waitlisted for our preschool program. And the preschool program is basically out of space. So they're trying to think of different ways to expand it. I guess the question here would be, what are your thoughts, A, on early education before K? And B, do you think the school committee should try to consider different ways to expand that option so that we don't have with the wait list we do now?
I think, preschool, pre-elementary, I think having that is key. And we see it in the district that I work in now, the importance of having exposure to literacy practices early, right? Getting students involved, also getting a read on where students are at going into kindergarten and what the needs may be. If that also involves kind of like early intervention, if it involves possibly referring for special education to provide them with the best tools going into kindergarten so they're best prepared to fly and they get that early literacy base in before they actually get to like early literacy in kindergarten first and second. So I think it's very important, and the importance of getting them used to schedules and routines in a classroom as opposed to just going into school from being at home or home daycare or what have you, I think is very important. And I absolutely think we should look into kind of expanding the early elementary, the preschool programs that we have in Wakefield.
No, it's true. I mean, I will tell you, it made a world of difference for my son. He didn't go to he didn't go to the Wakefield site because they were sold out. So we went somewhere else, but it was a huge, huge impact. Final question before we get to what I call the fun questions. The Greenwood neighborhood, my family's from Greenwood, my friends from Greenwood. They see that there's a new middle school, the new Galvin School, a new high school. The Woodville is relatively new. The Walton's had construction. And the Dolbear is 1999 it was built. So, I mean, still somewhat new, but newer than Greenwood, which has a variety of capital issues. There's no air conditioning, really, so it's later in the summer and early fall. It's tough in there. There's bathroom in the basement. I guess what are your thoughts on how we could or should we start to consider potentially building out that school or doing construction at that school?
Well, it's funny because my wife went to the Greenwood School.
Mm-hmm.
We live in the Greenwood area.
Oh, so you're one of the Greenwood parents.
Yes. And my children go to the Greenwood School. And I think, there may be some that, enjoy the nostalgia of being able to walk into the school they went to. And, there's some character in the halls of some of the older schools. But I think it's important to provide all of our students with all the tools they need to achieve. I'd start first with kind of like that statement that your friend had said before, staffing with, highly qualified teachers and teachers that care. And then second, providing them with the environment that they can learn in best. And if right now, like those not having air conditioning, not having maybe the tech that they could possibly have in a newer school, and kind of the old school, going down to the basement for, the restrooms type of thing. I think at the very least, like remodeled, updating, and if there's an appetite for it, possibly looking into, a new school.
No, understood. All right, so these are what I call my more fun questions. Can you give us an example of when you changed your mind?
Give me an example of when I changed
Well,
my
give
mind.
me an example, or give Wakefield an example of when you changed your mind
On anything?
on anything, or when you were open to feedback and you're like, you know what, you're right.
We talking family? Because that's a big one. I
No,
change my
no.
mind all the time. All right.
Any school issues, if you can think about them, or whatever.
I think with school issues and you know the mind changing moment might have came early in my career as like a high school dean, and I was always kind of brought up in whether it was through sports or athletics or being a coach myself, and being in schools that obviously there needs to be rules, regulations, and consequences for actions. But I started learning early on that like that mindset needed to be changed because in order to best benefit students, right, when they're having difficulty behavior-wise or anything else, they're having challenging behaviors that creep up, that disciplining, all the time isn't the way to go. And it doesn't necessarily mean, hey, I have rules, you're going to follow them. It was more changing my mind to like, we need to really take a look at what's causing the behaviors. All behaviors have meaning. How do we get to that? And how do we go through that, kind of that way of helping students as getting to a point where they're able to be at baseline when they're in school. That's a big point. That's a big change in my. I don't know if that's a change.
No,
you're
I
looking
think that's
for,
a great point. No.
But it was really about changing my mind from being kind of like a strict disciplinarian in the role as a dean to more of, caring about students and what's causing them to, move off of baseline behaviors when they're in class or act out or do something that's, not expected as a behavior.
No, understood. So the other fun question, I don't know if fun's the right adjective to use, but the other question I enjoy asking is there an issue that you think in your term on school committee we will confront that nobody is really talking about or not really in the public eye that much? Do you think there's an issue in the next 3 years that in education we'll be confronting we're not reading about or talking about? I mean, maybe we are, but just it's not very out there.
Well, I think everything that's going on currently, like it's tough because you're going to see that creep into every school district about the changes of the federal government and mandates that are being kind of handed down. I think, and this was keyed upon with a little bit with the discussion about later school times and different sleep patterns for students and their social emotional well-being, is just that the mental health of all of our students. Although it's talked about in schools all the time, some districts a little bit differently or more intensely than others. I think it's something that we're seeing a change in how children are brought up and what they're exposed to on a regular basis, and the access to, let's say, social media technology creates a situation where they're exposed to more, I guess I don't want to say more bullying, but more social interactions that create anxiety within them. And I don't know how well we're equipping all of our children to be able to deal with that.
Oh, perfect. All right. Final questions here. What's your favorite book?
It's funny. The last book I read was The Anxious Generation. It was about specifically about that, the change in a play-based childhood to more of a computer-based upbringing, and the impact of social media on students' mental health.
Favorite movie?
Let's see. I would have said back when I was coaching hockey, Miracle. Count of Monte Cristo.
That's a good movie too. Favorite book? I mean, sorry, favorite book. Favorite TV show. Sorry.
Ooh, favorite TV show. Current TV show?
Yeah, if you want. Yeah.
Let's see. What do I like to watch? Everyone's gets hooked into like these streaming shows. Oh, recently I watched, was it Paradise? Is that what
Great
it is?
show. I just watched that too, by the way. Great. That episode 7?
Oh, yeah.
Crazy. Crazy stuff. We won't spoil it for the people who are watching, but great show. And then finally, quick favorite musician / band.
Another tough one. So I was brought up in the 80s and 90s, and I was a big fan of this. I don't know how, this, people may look at me in a certain light with this, but big fan of New Edition.
Yeah, New Edition was great.
New Edition.
And then favorite song.
Honestly, and I'll look right at the camera because I know what it was, a New Edition song, and it was our wedding dance song, Can You Stand the Rain?
Look at you winning some points. All right, so then, very last question and last moment of the interview. Again, if you'd like, look into that camera and just wrap up and let the people of Wakefield know why they should vote for you.
I just need to get one vote, right?
So just one.
I think I might have won one, right?
Yeah, so as long as your wife votes for you, you're good.
I really think that my experience in the Everett Public School District, I don't know, kind of getting behind some of the things as a principal that really matter to families, and that's caring about students and families. And in some places it's needed more than others, but it's needed. It really is needed. It's needed a little bit more at different spots, but it's needed everywhere. Students need to know, and honestly, students and teachers need to know that the people that are in charge of, approving budgets and providing them with the best education care about them. And I think caring about our students and teachers is kind of integral to being an effective school committee member.
Wonderful. Well, Alex, you just got one vote. It's all you need, so I hope you get it. And congratulations. Thank you for your time, and thank you again to WCAT for doing this.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Oh, it's fun.